of being shackled with debt if the project doesn't work, so that we can.
I mean, for the types of projects that we do, you know, infrastructure projects, those really are not applicable for what we're doing. I can tell you that we do, and this is more prevalent in the water and sewer type projects where there's, you know, low interest loan financing that we've taken advantage of on several occasions. There's a lot of that out there. We have on some of our infrastructure projects we get interest-free OPWC loans, so you know, we're actively seeking, you know, to get those projects funded with OPWC loans. We get those from time to time. You know, so we are exploring all the different avenues for getting very low interest financing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Kilby?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wondering on this debt service, I don't know, I was under the impression that why is it an operating? Isn't that a capital expenditures debt service, most of it? I mean,
it is a capital expenditure. So this is, I mean, what we're looking at here is, you know, we're appropriating for all of the funds, so operating and capital.
Capital budget?
Yes.
Okay, all right, got you. All right. Well, anyways, let me just ask a couple general questions to Mr. Segedy. First off, I want to congratulate you. Your budget numbers seem to reflect your goals pretty well, and I think you've added some professionalism to the planning department since you came down here and took over this job. Now, one of the goals of the mayor is what, to get the population up. What did he say? 350,000 or something?
250,000 by 2050.
Okay, by 2050, yeah, it's a long
I'll be
way off.
78.
I'll be 100 years old.
Who's counting though?
I'll be 100. I don't think I'll be here.
We'll look for you.
But
I'll let you know how that.
okay, so you know, to get to any long-term goal, you have to have incremental steps. Okay, so are we monitoring what the population is? I know we got the big influx of Asians in Northville, my ward, which is good. I think it's good for the city. But are we? I mean, you know, before the census, we're gonna have another census here in what, 2 years? How do we? I mean, who monitors what the population is? How do we know what the population is in Akron if there's no census?
It's a good question. So we do have kind of a operating goal, even with the planning to grow Akron and passage of the tax abatement. I'd really like to get us over 200,000 again in 2020. So we're at around 198,000. I think that will be it's a challenging goal, but I think because we've just got 2 years left. But the census does estimates every year through what's called the American Community Survey. The last set of census estimates, we were actually, and this isn't a big number, but it's it has a plus in front of it instead of a minus. We were up about 90 people in the last estimate. So, you know, the estimates are estimates. They could, you know, they have a margin of error, but I was still heartened to see that it was positive. Some of the things I mentioned earlier, you know, I think this year alone we have the potential for hundreds of new housing units to come on, either to be built or at least to be in the planning stage where they might be built next year or in 2020. So I think we're definitely going in the right direction, but the goal of 250 by 2050 is definitely ambitious, but I think we wanted to pick an ambitious goal.
Right. You know, are you gonna, is it along the same subject? Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to, I'm glad Mr. Kilby, Mr. Chairman looked like he was off into deep thought. But to Mr. Kilby's point and to Mr. Segedy's point, I think it's important for us as a community. This census is going to be crucial to not just our city, but to the region. But the challenges that we have is that a large part of our population that is going to help us boost our numbers, they're shell-shocked because of this whole ISIS thing. We need to put together a community plan to really let folks know, because I get calls, I don't know about my constituents, I get calls from seniors who this temporary or prelim census where they knock on the door, they're leery of them because of everything that's happening. We need to really put on a strong campaign, because you're right, Mr. Segedy, there's already knowledge that the population of color, their numbers are underrepresented because of lack of trust. When you add the immigrant population, we could lose, just because of the state of conditions within our nation right now. So I think some kind of way we need to work with some of our grassroots organizations that have good relationships, and folks like the folks with Big Love and the Womb come to mind, and other groups that have good relationships, and really put together a strong push and get them to help us with this census thing so that our numbers could be accurate, because the ramifications will impact us for the next 10 years or so. So I'm glad Mr. Kilby brought that up. I'm glad you made that mention, but we definitely, like other communities, every community is going to be challenged, but especially we're concerned about ours. We need to put together a strong
Along
push.
those lines, with the census, that's a federal program. A lot of things are out of our hands. I understand that, and there's people wondering if this present administration is going to want to count poor people. So I think his point's well taken. We need to do something to make sure they do. Okay, lobby them to make sure they put together an accurate census. And I know you guys know what I'm talking about. You know way more about this than I do or any of us do, because that's you're a planning director and a professional planner. But I was one number that if you're done with the, can I still have the chair, Mr.
As long as we stay on topic.
Yeah. Okay. There's changing the subject a little bit. The one I looked over all these sheets, and the one number that kind of jumps out here is like page 1221, and they had people at my ward meeting last month talking about this lead. Okay, we got $666,000 budgeted. We spent 1,431 last year. What is this, all federal money that's coming in or something? Or?
I think that one you're referring to the lead grant. So that's federal funds through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. That program is actually, it's administered now by the Department of Neighborhood Assistance. That's our Housing Rehabilitation Division. And you might recall last year we transferred that division to the Department of Neighborhood Assistance to kind of get our housing-related activities together. But it is still in planning's operating budget because it comes out of the federal funds that we get from HUD.
Right, and just as kind of a general comment, there will be some places both within the Department of Neighborhoods and the Department of Planning where we move things back and forth, so if some of the numbers look a little bit different, it's for that reason, the fact that we...
How does that transfer show up for us? Where will we see that?
Well, for instance, in the instance that we just talked about, I believe that those costs are shown in the Department of Neighborhoods as opposed to in this particular budget. So that's why this one looks a little funny. The expenditures actually happened under the Department of Neighborhoods.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that was a question that I had too. So if it shows over in neighborhood development, is the expenditures actually different?
Can I just ask for clarification? Are we referring to lead or NSP3? Which NSP3 was 1221.
Yeah, I'm actually talking 1220 and 1221.
Okay. So 1220. Okay, let's 1221 is actually neighborhood stabilization 3 money that we received in 2011 during the stimulus package, the second round of the stimulus packages. And so these funds are hopefully going to wrap up the program income that we received through the sale of some housing units that we built. So I'm hoping within 2018, partially 2019, we will issue an RFP process and work with some of our nonprofit builders to build some houses in our neighborhood stabilization 3 boundary areas. And then neighborhood, I think you said 1220. That is NSP 1 money that we received in 2009 under the Bush administration. And that again is some program income money that we've received, and we're hoping to budget that and get at least 2 houses built by the end of this year.
Okay, thank you very, very much. I think you've heard from the majority of folks here that everybody's pretty pleased with the way things are going, and we like get more out of it, get some attention.
Well, we appreciate working with all of you, and Mr. Chair, if you
I like them too, but I wasn't done with my question.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. That was not intentional.
Oh, no. I just didn't want y'all to give all that love away till I finished asking all my questions. And so, on the 1220, were those the same issues in 2016? Because I would imagine that the 290-something thousand was available then too.
It was still available, but we did not. I think we only entered 1 contract agreement, so this is just a carryover. They're not additional funds.
So on average, the contract on average is about 100,000 or?
It's something like that, and then we do have language within the contract that the city receives net proceeds back from the sale. Mm-hmm. So if it costs $130,000 to build it, and they sell it for, they subsidize it as well with other funding sources, but then we actually asked for some of the money to come back to us, and that's how we've built some of this program income within those sales.
Okay, and finally, back to the 221, do we anticipate, when we do RFPs for this?
We will reach out to our nonprofits to assist us in building these houses.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I realized I had mentioned who the managers were, but I didn't point out who is who, so I thought if you'd indulge us, maybe everybody could just introduce themselves that's behind me. I thought you knew most of them, but just in case, so.
I knew that was my Okay, thank you very, very much, and thanks for the comments. I think we all feel pretty good about the way, we've seen things happen in some sectors that maybe we haven't before, and looking at our neighborhoods and small business districts, especially for some of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
She's talking about it on the ramp.
She does great work. She's stressed about it. There'll be some day.
I know. I will make sure.
Yeah.
At least she'll give an update. Exactly
Yeah,
what is.
thank you. Yeah, and if you can get him to do it a little quicker. Yeah, thank you.
All right. We're going to, Ms. Miller-Dawson, are you going to take the lead here on our, Mr. Fricker is, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before you are the managers of the Finance Department. We're at a department of 87 employees now. We have an administrative division with myself, Diane, and our executive assistant, Tina Vick. But the real work is done by the people behind me and their staff. So I'm going to briefly go through each of the divisions within the Finance Department. So first of all, we have our Audit and Budget Division with our manager, Audit and Budget Manager, Cindy Donnell. A couple of the highlights from 2017 and 18 as well. So we just completed how many years with the state auditor?
He never
13 or
leaves.
14? 13 years with the state auditor has been doing our audit, and so the 2016 audit was the last one that they did. So we now have an accounting firm called Plant Moran that is going to be doing our audit for 2017, and I believe they have a 5-year engagement, yes. So we have new auditors in right now. One of the other highlights, and I'll let Cindy go into the details of this, but we are doing several GASB, which is Governmental Accounting Standards Board implementations. So these are features that we have to put in our financial report, our CAFR accounting standards that we have to comply with in a number of different areas. Our accounting department is managed by Kim Guzman. She is our accounting manager.
Hi, Kim.
And one of the major highlights from accounting is that we implemented this year, we implemented something called self-service in our PeopleSoft payroll application. So, you know, we used to send out weekly the payroll stubs. We had to print payroll stubs for roughly 2,000 employees, full-time and part-time, distribute them out to the payroll clerks out at various buildings throughout the city. We implemented an online feature where you can opt to enroll and just access your pay stub, you know, via the computer, and it saved a lot of time. So that's one of the technology initiatives that we completed in 2017. Our purchasing division, with our purchasing agent, Kim Heron. A couple highlights there is we're in the process of kind of decommissioning our storeroom. So for years we've had a storeroom that exists on the 5th floor of City Hall where we used to stock a number of items, but with the with the internet age and the fact that you can order things online and get them quickly within a day, we're trying to phase that out, and what we are looking to do is implement online ordering for the departments so that they can go directly, for instance, to the My Office Products website, and everyone would have an ID and be able to order their own supplies. So we are in the early stages of examining that, and I think that'll be a huge time saver for all of our departments. One of the other things we did in purchasing this year is that we experimented with a reverse auction bidding system where we tried we bid out chemicals for our water department, and we contracted with a website where there was an online auction, and the various bidders over a 15-minute period submitted their bids, and it was a competitive bid, so they could, continuously bid lower and lower and lower. So it's something that we're experimenting with. We weren't that happy with the results of that particular auction, but that was just one commodity, and it's something that we're going to examine in the future to see if we can get better pricing on some of our items that we buy. We have our income tax division with our tax commissioner, Art Prekshaw. So one of the major highlights that we had in 2017 is we implemented our contractor registration program, whereas contractors have to register both with the service department and with our income tax division, and so we make sure that all the contractors that are performing work in the city of Akron are registered, and our tax department is aware that they're performing work here. Our treasury division with our city treasurer, Cheryl Bryson. Oh. Yes, So Treasury, they are gearing up to, included within the Treasury Division is the Assessments and License Office. So they have a huge task in front of them with the passage of Issue 4 and the additional lane miles of streets that will be resurfacing. This is going to be the biggest resurfacing year that we've done in some time, so that's quite an undertaking for them to send out the notifications and send out the billings from that resurfacing project, so they are gearing up for that right now. And then we have our Utilities Business Office Manager, Andre Blaylock. One of the highlights for the business office is they're in the process of replacing our night deposit box that's in front of the City Center building with an online a kiosk. And I'll let Andre explain a little bit more about that.
Yes, thank you. Approximately 1,000 of our customers use a night depository that's in the front of the building. We're going to replace that with basically a reverse ATM machine. They just punch in their address, 123 Brown Street. You can either swipe your credit card, scan your check, or insert your cash. You get a receipt, and you're done. So that's a technology initiative for us because we have to pay someone right now to retrieve all those payments that go into the night depository, apply them to the accounts. Then many of those customers are up for disconnection for non-payment. Then they're calling us later that day. Did you receive my payment? Am I still up for disconnection? Now they make their payment, they receive a receipt, they know they're not up for disconnection, so it's a win-win for both us and the consumer.
So your phone's going to be ringing a lot less.
Yes, let's hope.
Okay.
The chairman gave me permission to ask a question. Is there a camera out there so when people are making those transactions, they're safeguarded?
There isn't one now, but there will be as part of the kiosk project.
Perfect.
There'll be a camera and a light.
I was worried about it.
Yeah, Bruce?
So what do you mean by a kiosk? I know what a kiosk is up in a mall, but what is it going to be? Is it going to be the same place that we have?
It will be the same place. It will replace the night depository, and it'll basically look just like an ATM machine.
Okay.
You will be able to type in your address or your account number, state how you're going to pay, whether check, credit card, or cash, and then you receive a receipt, and you're done.
That's a good idea for you.
Thank you.
Is there any thought, is this the only place we have? Because some people don't want to come downtown to pay their bill.
Yes, this is going to be the only place we will have it for now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
When's that going to be done, Andre? When are we going to do this?
We don't have
We're hoping to have it done in the next few months.
Okay.
So hopefully mid-year, late summer.
So we're going to try to get some publicity so people know that when they come down?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, with that, if there's any questions about the numbers, we start on page 13.1, right?
13.1? With the, and I'm not sure where to look in the budget here, with the additional issue 4 money, is there an increase in labor reflected anywhere because there's just more, okay, where would I see that at, Cheryl?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, council people. If you would look, I'm sorry, let me put my cheaters on. If you would look at 1311 and 1312, you will see that there are 2 people currently in the assessments division and 3 in the treasury division. You will see the increase of the salary on 1312 in the treasury division.
Okay.
although this person that we are slating to hire will actually be split between the two budgets. It will be split between the assessment and treasury budget.
So it looks like an extra $20,000. Okay. Questions, comments? A lot of numbers here, obviously. Yes,
Please.
Mr. Kilby.
My question is, with the contractor registration program, is this for all contractors, small contractors that come into the city, or just projects that we have?
I wrote that one. Good afternoon. Yes, he can answer. The contractors registration program is for all contractors. It is not focused solely on contracts that the city of Akron is involved with. So all contractors are required to register, first with the income tax division and then with plans and permits. And we have a coordinated effort on this and tracking system.
With, why don't you go ahead, and then I'll ask my next. Oh, Mr. Chair, may I come, could you possibly come back to me in a moment, and I'll let my colleague.
I was going to recognize Mr. Fusco.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Representative Keith. We had voted on this early last year, I believe it was, last year early. And it's taken a little bit of time, but what it amounts to is primarily for construction that's done outside the city, whereas, you know, like, for example, apartments being built for the university or not city, not projects that we are undertaking. And we voted on this and passed it. It's one of the first in the state, actually. And it's the responsibility primarily of the general contractor to ensure that all the subs register with the city of Akron. So we have a pipeline to ensure that we collect the income tax dollars. So this is, it's kind of groundbreaking to a large extent. But, and I know to implement it's kind of a challenge, but I'm sure you guys are getting there. But we passed this not long ago, so.
So did we see an increase in revenue that shows up here anywhere because of contractor registration, or?
We have a number of registrations that already involved compliant contractors. And then we also have another group that are probably compliant as well. However, they are new contractors doing business in the city of Akron. So that legislation was passed, I believe, in February of 2017. And rough numbers, we had 500 or so that were registered prior to the implementation of this new process, and then I can't recall the number that came in after that, but it was a smaller number because many of those had already registered with us. But the key to this is that they cannot get a permit through plans and permits without first having registration with the income tax division, so we know what's going on there. We met a few weeks ago also with one of the multiple jurisdictional contractors registration associations, and they were talking about also how those general contractors are responding and the associated response, if you will, of the subcontractors that are working under them in these projects as well.
Mr. Kilby, yeah, and then we'll come back to Ms. Keith.
Okay, while we're on this subject, along this line, you know, how long have we been doing this? We just implemented this, correct? I mean, recently? And Mr. Fusco said it was one of the first, we're one of the first cities to do it in the state. Have we gotten any resistance, I guess would be the word, from the Contractors Association?
I think that it was initiated originally from the Contractors Association.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an idea solely born from the city of Akron coming up with a program, if you will, to make sure that we want to make sure that everyone's filing and paying the tax.
Okay.
And these individuals that came up with this idea, I believe, was more focused on, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. How about everybody else? And let's play on the same footing. So that's probably more a question for council and how that legislation was crafted at that time. That's my knowledge.
Usually, when we do something like this, I'm just anticipating, and I don't know if you guys are, state saying we can't do this. I mean, with our, you know, do you see that happening? Contractors complain to the governor and the state legislators, and then they say, Akron, you can't do that. Is that a possibility, or do you anticipate that happening? I know it seems like a pretty logical home rule issue to me, but you know how they.
We have not encountered that.
Not
as,
yet.
you know, as was said, I think this was something that the Contractors Association was pushing for themselves because, you know, they did want the contractors that are doing what they're supposed to do and registering and paying their taxes. You know, they want it to be an equal playing field for everyone, so.
In its simplest terms, we were notified that there's several large projects in the city of Akron. Subs were not paying income tax.
Okay.
Bottom line, that's it. And so we try to figure out ways to fill that and to ensure compliance because, as mentioned, the people from Akron who pay their taxes was bringing this to our attention that this isn't happening. Out-of-town subs would come in here, work several months, and then they would skate without paying income tax. And so that was part of the impetus for this whole thing.
Mrs. Keith.
Are there any other questions, so I can be last? No. Well, I want to thank you. There's a number of people back there that I know them by name and I never see them, okay? So this is nice. And then, as maybe some of you know, but many of you don't know, our Andre there is going to be retiring here after 40 years.
Wow.
31. And you are going to be missed. I have to tell you, I have all the confidence in the world when I have someone who is upset about a water bill or an issue, whatever. I have all the confidence in the world to say you need to reach out to Mr. Blaylock because he takes the time. They may not like the answer, but he is always courteous, respectful, and you share your knowledge. So you are going to be missed, as many of you will be when your time comes. But right now,
I would just like to echo what Councilwoman Keith just said. I mean, Andre will be missed. The customers, no matter what he's telling them, good or bad news, they always appreciate the manner in which he talks to them. We get a lot of great comments about Andre's customer service, so yes, he will be missed.
I think you've been married 40 years. That must have been right.
Thank you. We all echo those comments. Thank you, Andre. Yes, Mr. Kilby.
I just been hearing some stuff, and I'm not exactly clear on what it is. Something about the state wants to take over the role of municipal income tax collection. What is that about? I mean, can somebody explain that to me a little better than just?
I'll let Mr. Preakshaw, because he knows a lot more about it than I do, but they've taken the first step to where they are allowing businesses to register with the state and file their net profit returns through the state. So that would be kind of the first step. The next step would be if they allowed the payment of withholding tax, or if they mandated that you go through the state versus paying the cities directly.
But before Art starts, there is legislation on the list currently pending about that situation. As you know, the city did file a lawsuit. We lost the case, basically, and I think we are looking to refile.
So how would that adversely affect the city? I mean, we won't get
Well, as you know, and I think I described when we presented it a few weeks ago, income tax is our lifeblood. The state stepping in, taking, our income tax, taking a cut of it for a service that we're very good at providing is just really going to, I think, hurt the city's livelihood. Again, that is our lifeblood. We saw it as an infringement on our rights as a city.
Are other cities fighting? I think I saw something in this magazine, was it Ohio Municipal League?
Yes.
They're fighting, correct?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, well, I'm not sure if Ohio Municipal League has standing, but most cities, have banded together to fight this. I mean, this will impact large cities as well as small cities. Again, it's another threat on home rule.
Didn't we pass a resolution opposing that just a little bit ago? Yeah,
There is a resolution currently on the agenda.
Oh, that's, okay. All right, thank you.
Obviously, over the past 4 days here, we've had...
Yeah, now, hold on, before we end, as I mentioned before, our IT department, which is now technically part of the mayor's office, but was scheduled under the finance, finance department. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Bill Fatica to talk about the Department of Information Technology.
Bill, I should have noticed you. I know you're not a part of finance, and I should have noticed you over there. I apologize.
All right. Good afternoon, council members. Just want to first start off to let you know it's an honor and a pleasure to come down here every year and speak and talk to you folks. And also, I spend a lot of time working on iPads and phones and stuff like that, so it's keeps me busy. All right, before I introduce who I brought with me today, I just wanted to start off by just making a couple points here. As you guys know, in 2016, the city signed an agreement with the county to have a shared partnership, sharing resources, looking to maybe take some advantages of purchasing IT equipment and stuff like that. The mayor also appointed, I guess, Mark Pettit to be the acting or interim CIO for the city, and he's currently the CIO for Summit County. So we've been working with him. His first order of business was to create a new department for the city of Akron, the new Office of Information Technology. I think that was developed, first part of last year. And that was really to bring all the different IT departments together within the city. Police and fire, my group, there's a couple people over in water pollution control, WPC, to get us all together and work a little bit together. Mark put together a organizational chart for the new department. And then that's where I like to start. We have a couple new folks with us that are working with us. First of all, I'd like to introduce Darren Rosnick. You guys may know him. He was our GIS coordinator. Did a good job with GIS, and he's currently now the applications manager for our department. And also I have Engelbert Gal. He's fairly new at the city, maybe a year and a half maybe. And he was working over, he initially got hired in safety, so he was working over there. And he's currently filling in the position infrastructure manager for our new department. Just to talk out a little bit here, one of the things that we did, I'm just going to mention a couple points that we did with the county this year. Last March, I worked with a couple, four individuals from the county, and we deployed probably about 130, 140 computers last March as far as our computer lease program. The 4 county people worked with me and pretty much did a good job in getting all those 130 computers deployed throughout the city. Another thing that we did, we worked with the county to develop a new help desk ticket system for the IT department. And we're using a product called ServiceNow. The county was using ServiceNow, so we thought maybe it'd be a good idea to piggyback off their system and work together to get that up and running. It's a cloud-based solution. We worked, I don't know, maybe a couple months, Darren, last summer with the county team in developing all of our service requests and stuff like that, and get it working in the new system. We also developed a new phone line for the IT department. It's 375-2-OIT if you need to get a hold of our help desk group. And the help desk group consists of a county person and also a city person. So when you call that number, you can either get Tia Williams is handling it for the city side, and Angel is handling on the county side. So they're working together. They're doing like password resets, banner resets, passwords, and trying to help us out with some little issues like Word and Excel, printing issues, stuff like that. So that's been working out pretty good. We put the new system up and running last August. So we're still doing a little bit tweaking with that, trying to get our service requests together. It's coming along. I mean, it's a pretty good, work in progress. We're making some pretty good strides with that. A couple other things that we just did this year. When we bring new systems in, we look at systems that we can spread out citywide. One of the systems that we implemented a couple years ago for our 311 system was called CityWorks. Towards the end of last year, we started working with Public Service on bringing, their work order system, what is it, water, Darren, and sewer, into the new system. So we're looking to go live with that, middle summer this year, 2018, to go live with the utility or water department on that. What's it, like water distribution? Water supply, right. Another thing that we did on base is our document management system. Another really good piece of software. We implemented police records last year. So the police records group over in safety is part of the on-base system now. You guys are using on-base as far as your agendas. We're doing purchase orders, that type of thing, all in on-base. And we also started, end of last year, working with the tax department. They had an older document management system and that was no longer supported. So we've been working with Art. Darren's been working with Art and his group to get tax all up and running in our new system. So that's pretty much all I had to say today. If you guys have any questions for me.
I apologize. I forgot that you were under finance. I'm still thinking back when you were under, was it the mayor? IT was in.
We were. So it's exactly the opposite. Yeah. So they were formerly under finance, and now they are under the mayor.
Now you're under mayor, but on our agenda, that's hard.
Right, yeah. So we, got into old habits when we set up the schedule, and, because we just did that this year, basically, so this is a relative, yeah, right.
You just didn't want to give it up, huh? Okay, yeah, thanks for reporting out about the county thing, too, because, there was questions from council when that happened, and so.
All right, Mr. Neal?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Ms. Fatick and then a couple for Mr. Fricker and Ms. Miller-Dawson. You mentioned the on-base for council, and I know, boy, I can't think of how many years ago now, in the discussion when we were looking at on-base, there was discussion about eventually getting to the point where we as council could follow legislation through and have a level of service where we could put our comments in, and then there'd be a level of service where our constituents could follow it. They may not see our notes, but they would at least see the legislation. How far are we from that?
I think as far as the legislation process, I mean, I might have to ask Darren on this. I think that was something that was put on hold as far as working with law and getting the, legislation all streamlined and electronically.
Yeah, that's part of the agenda management online. So it's something that was kind of put on hold mid last year before we put the new department together. We're going to try and relook at that and see how to bring that back up and start to get more functionality out of it. Part of it was halted due to some discussions with law that were worried about their part and how that would have to function. So it is something we are bringing back up to look at again and to start to utilize that portion of it more than what we currently do.
Okay. Mr. Chair, we don't have a, Mr. Chair, I was saying we don't have a technology like committee here, but it would be good for council to at least be briefed as a part of those discussions, because many times people have come down here and said, hey, you guys are voting on stuff, we haven't been able to see the legislation, or we've had members of committee who would have liked to have been involved in the legislation as it's going through, and we don't see it till it hits here. It's just a tool that, is out there that we can use to make us more efficient, make us more transparent and engaging with our constituents. So if we could get an idea of if there's any extra costs or what that would be and how far we are off, that would be good for one on that piece. So we could keep that on our as part of our strategic goal process. My other questions are more so related to the finance side. When I was looking through here, it made me think of some things because I saw unclaimed funds. And, we had asked if we can, before we're asked to vote on this, get an idea of all the funds that we have in their fund balance. But one came to mind, and I don't know if anybody remembers that one time the police department came and told us about some dollars that they had. I think it was close to $1 million. And if we get an idea of where that sits and legally, is that restricted funds? Or after a period of time, after it sits there, is that a part of where it's open to the city as a whole?
We can take possession of those funds after they are released. So, and oftentimes it goes back to the person that they were taken from.
Correct.
And we can get them if there's a court-ordered release of those funds. So that does sometimes happen, but we need, the courts to release those funds back to the city, and sometimes that's after a period of time.
Because what I'd like to do is for council and the finance department to talk, not saying that always those funds are associated with something that injures the community, but a lot of times they are. And so I'd like for us to work, for council to work with the police department and the finance department to put something in place that when they are released, we allocate those funds to, if not directly to the neighborhood where the injury took place, that we at least allocate it to some type of neighborhood initiative. The next thing is also if we can, I know you're working on getting us the expenditures for exactly where the dollars went for the money from the proceeds that when we sold the cell towers, so that we can look at that. And then just, from my part and where as I try to wrap my mind around things, I know there are a lot of things that are budgeted, and sometimes we go over budget, or there are things that are where we're under budget. What I'd like to see, and from council's standpoint, is if there are monies that are budgeted and aren't used, and I'm going to use like we talked about the My Neighborhood, Our Akron City Council grant. We had budgeted over the last 3 years $300,000. I think we may have used somewhere in the neighborhood. I don't even know if we used $50,000 or $60,000, somewhere around there. So like when the money's done, I know it goes back to the general fund. If we can have a way of being informed so that either the money stays what it was budgeted for, like the one, I forget what one fund we were looking at, and that's what was happening. The money stayed there and it just kept accruing. Or before it is reallocated, council is informed so that we can have input to make sure that it's helping to meet a goal. So in the neighborhood part, what comes to mind is you know, there's a push for neighborhood development, but I know at one time, I don't know what it is now, at one time we had less than, right around 50,000 for neighborhood economic development across the city. Someone, you know, and council has to have time where we can sit and talk and prioritize, but I would like for us to put some type of policy in place that when funds come in and they're not spent for the, as budgeted, and they go into the general fund, that either they stay at least in that category where they're budgeted before they're spent, or if they're moved to be spent in some other area, we at least have an understanding of what that is.
Okay. Well, one thing I'll point out about the, you know, and we've actually run a report of all of the underspent line items that occurred in 2017, so I have that number. But keep in mind what was happening with the general fund. So the general fund budget, our fund balance, was essentially staying at $5 or so million every year. So it's not like these underspent dollars were accumulating and that general fund balance was growing. We were, you know, it was kind of a, you know, it was an equal balance of funds being underspent and overspent, to where that fund balance is really staying fairly constant at $5 million.
No, I understand. Just want to make sure that if we're spending it, it's still being spent in the area that it was budgeted for.
Well, it gets reappropriated the next year according to how we budget. So, you know, we're not really making drastic changes, you know, in the general fund divisions year to year. We're, you know, essentially appropriating the same staffing levels that we've had, you know, with some exceptions if, you know, if we're hiring safety forces that year or something like that. But we're, you know, we go through that same process again next year where we appropriate all the funds across the departments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Any other questions for IT? Bill, thanks. Thanks to your guys over here, and thanks for, you know, partnership that's worked out, seems to be with the county here. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks for all your patience, IT.
Okay, I tell you what, Mr. Fricker, if you want to wrap up, and
that's all we have.
Okay.
We will be introducing the appropriation ordinance next Monday, along with there's a budget resolution that is also a piece of legislation that is passed annually. We also will have, and we will go over them Monday at Finance Committee, we do have some modifications to, you know, what has been presented here, a couple things we found, so we'll go through those, you know, individually at Monday at Finance Committee.
will we be able to have those on a, either highlighted?
It'll be a spreadsheet, yeah.
Or
I mean,
just its own
yeah,
document
yeah,
itself?
we'll present a spreadsheet of the changes that we're proposing.
Okay.
Yes.
And how many documents, please? Motion for adjournment?
Okay, motion for adjournment. We have a motion and a second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks for your time, thanks for your patience, and thanks everyone for your attendance here this week. Thank you.